Today we will be talking about Pendler culture because it's an issue that really bothers me. It's an issue that really bothers me. Because I don't like Pendler culture. Pendler culture is basically when there is a big city, which is an economic powerhouse, it's often pretty expensive to live there. In the more rural areas, it's cheap. Housing is cheap there. So therefore, many people who would otherwise have lived in the economic powerhouse of a city is now living in the more rural area. The thing is, I believe that this is a bad idea. I personally think that people should live and work near each other, or in the same area. However, if we take Copenhagen as an example, my favourite city to criticise, is the capital of Denmark, and actually the largest city and most powerful economically in Denmark. It has by far the biggest impact on the economy in Denmark. However, there are a lot of places to work in Copenhagen, but there are not as many places to actually live, which means there is a big fight over housing in Copenhagen, which means the housing there is very expensive compared to a more rural place like this, where normal people are actually able to live. It's a fight between banks. It's beyond normal people. Normal people that live in Copenhagen earn almost none of their houses. It's almost all owned by the bank through mortgages, which in itself I think is a very bad idea. I don't really think it makes sense. That when you buy a house, it doesn't really buy it, your bank buys it and rents it to you. However, there is one other possibility when you have to work in Copenhagen, as many people have to, and that is simply to go as far out as possible. Instead of living in the dead-eye centre in Copenhagen, you can live in the suburbs, or you can live in entire cities called Pendler cities outside Copenhagen, which is cities in their own right, but people only live there because they have the possibility to pendle to Copenhagen each morning to go to work. In turn, housing prices are pretty cheap which means that you can save a bunch of money by not buying a house in Copenhagen and buying a house outside Copenhagen. And basically at this point the entirety of Zealand is by some means pendling to Copenhagen, which is absolutely insane to me. I'm a pendler too. I go by ferry each morning and I cycle each morning. Why are there so many people out of this hour? However, I live almost in the city I pendle to. There are suburbs in that city that are further out than this separate town. We are talking, the problem that I'm talking about is maybe you live 50 kilometers from your workplace and I have to either drive or take public transit all that way. And now, driving is absolutely insane, but taking public transit is such a waste of time anyway. And I do believe that it has legitimately negative consequences for both the places that people don't live in and the places that people don't work in. Because obviously the places that people don't work in still have to function. They still have nursing homes, they still have hospitals, and they still have to have institutions like schools or kindergartens. But it can be hard to attract workers because people are willing to go to the larger city. As an example, if you live in Slagelse in Denmark, a very large percentage of people go to Copenhagen every day, which is almost on the opposite side of Zealand, which I think is mad. They do that either by car or by public transit, which means that Zealand in general have very weak links. If there's the thing that is disturbing traffic, it means hours of traffic jam or hours of train delays. It's a very shaky system compared to what you find over in Western Jutland or something, where there first of all isn't as many people, and people generally work and live the same place, even if they get fewer and fewer. And I think there's a very real issue that I am not fully aware what the consequences actually are. It's just speculation. But I could imagine that if there is a place that is very attractive to work, people will want to work there. The salaries in Copenhagen are much higher than they are in all the other smaller towns in Zealand, which I could imagine would mean that fewer people want to work there, especially because the reason why people move to rural Zealand is because they can work in Copenhagen. The reason that most people move to Eastern Jutland is so that they can work in Aarhus. But what about the towns and cities that they live in themselves, with thousands of inhabitants all pendling to the larger city? I would be afraid that those cities are pretty much forgotten about. They are those heartless drive-through cities that doesn't have any culture, and that doesn't really have any happy people. In turn, the other way around, I would be afraid that cities like Copenhagen, because of the high housing prices, are difficult to also, build a culture. How are people in Copenhagen? There are really not many people that live there, compared to how many that should be living there. Most people come from outside the city. They just go in and go home from work, which is very depressing, because that often, I could imagine that means that a lot of Copenhagen, especially the places where people work but don't live, could in the future become very desolate, because there simply isn't any people living there because it's too expensive. They go out and live elsewhere. Also, imagine if people used 15 minutes to bike to work instead of sitting on the motorway. Instead of sitting on the motorway or in a train for 1 hour and a half, how much time is wasted by commuting? I almost don't even want to see the statistics, because I fear it's very, very wasteful. I mean, if you work in a hospital in Copenhagen, but live about 1.5 hours away, you have to waste 3 hours in commute every single day. That is detrimental for the health of people, and it's wasteful for the economy, I would imagine, because no one gains from people sitting on a motorway. No one really gains from people sitting in trains. We want to shorten the commute time, I would think. And the commute time is absolutely horrible many places. Like, personally, my commute time is to the long side. I commute for about 50 minutes one way, because I chose to live here. But I would think that is insanely high. Apparently it's not really. Many people I've met, like, pendle from everywhere in the country almost. Like, they're sitting in a train from the middle of the country out to the edge where we are right now. It's absolutely insane, and I don't understand how people can manage that at all. Also, people didn't used to do this. We didn't used to be as flexible as we are right now. we used to have quite a short commute time compared to what we have now. That's the idea, that we work where we live, which I support. However, nowadays, it's not very uncommon that you work 50 kilometers or more from where you live and take public transit, or even worse, drive to where you need to be. Which seems so stupid because we are in the age of the internet, and seems very unhealthy. And it seems like every time I talk with people that work in Copenhagen, they're always from all other parts. Every time I look at statistics from stations at the train stations around, in especially Zealand, but also in Eastern Jutland, they all go to larger cities. Almost the entirety of Eastern Jutland and almost the entirety of Zealand is just pendling towards Aarhus and Copenhagen, which is horrifying to me. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of public money, it's a waste of private money, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of psychiatrists. Also, I could imagine, like, there's a reason why people are doing worse now than ever in terms of health. It feels like every time I open the news, it's like 42% of young people feel stressed out. Oh yeah, why do they feel stressed out? They can't afford to live where they do. They can't afford to live. Oh, shut up. Shut up, you idiot dog. Ignore that, please. They can't afford to live where they do. They are about to be, you know, the education is shortened to quote-unquote save money that will be used in wars that doesn't really benefit us. And the vacations are shortened to, again, save money, while there is tax break to the rich people. The registration taxes on vehicles are being chopped off. The public transit sector is so underfunded, it's insane that it's still running. Overall, it's pretty depressing. And I think Pendler culture is a big part of that. I think if people actually lived and worked the same place, cities would be not much nicer, and people would be much nicer. Everything would be much nicer. We would do things. I mean, people would want to care about where they lived. People would have the time to care about social issues other than their own economic issues. We are promised all the time things will get better. They won't. So the people that know that, people that know stuff know that things are going downhill. It's not even false news. It's going terrible. And I think Pendler culture is a very, very big part of that, and much bigger than we actually think it is. At the same time, I think it's funny that we pendle now than ever. I think it's funny that we pendle now than ever, more now than ever, but still the public transit sector is in its worst stage since I don't know. It is doing so bad. Public transit sector is doing so bad. Bus lines are being cut off everywhere. Meanwhile, the government insists of saying, yay, let's build some new motorways. Also, we haven't even talked about the economic, the environmental footprint, which I also could imagine would be insanely high. But, yeah, Pendler culture is bad, that's basically what I'm saying. So yeah, take away from this video.